thank you all for coming. This is an amazing turnout, and welcome to Working for Each Other, Working for Ourselves. And this is the subtitle is A Revolutionary Public Service Worker Organized Summit, and hosted by the Industrial Workers of the World in Toronto. So thank you all for coming again.
This summit has a massive name that's quite a mouthful. So we wanted to break down a little bit what we meant by the idea of working for each other, working for ourselves. And some of that you can find in the welcome message in the program, but we'd also like to say a few more words right now. So this summit is about us all struggling for a better world. We hope that this serves as a contribution to the development of a fighting, revolutionary movement of working people that might be capable of overthrowing capitalism and systemic oppression once and for all. It's easy to articulate what we're against. We're against the violence of the system in which we live and the environmental destruction, poverty, misery, and humiliation it produces. In the words of the preamble of the IWW's Constitution, there could be no peace so long as hunger and want are found among millions of the working people, and the few who make up the employing class have all the good things in life. The preamble to the Constitution also asserts it is the historic mission of the working class to do away with capitalism. The army of production must be organized not only for everyday struggle with capitalists, but to carry on production when capitalism shall have been overthrown. By organizing industrially, we are forming the structure of the new society within the shell of the old. The focus of this summit will be on developing the skills necessary to build a movement which might be capable of doing away with capitalism. However, we also want to take some time here to consider what exactly it is that we're fighting for. We, a small group of revolutionaries, members of a small revolutionary union, could take this time to explain our grand vision of a world in which capitalism has been defeated. Unfortunately for us, maybe fortunately for you, we don't know exactly what that future society we might call the collective commonwealth or socialism or what have you will look like. What we do know concretely is what our lives and work are like under capitalism and what we aspire for our lives and work in a just society. So in that vein, we've prepared a few short testimonies which explain what it is that we do for a living and why, and what some of our issues and grievances are. And importantly, how we think our jobs might be different if we were part of a larger and stronger labor movement, and also what our jobs might be like if we actually win and overthrow capitalism. So I'm going to start, and we're going to pass the mic around. Everybody up here is going to say a little piece. Okay, so I'm going to go first. I should introduce myself, I guess. Matt didn't introduce himself either. This is Matt. I'm Jordan. We're members of the Toronto IWW. I'm a teaching assistant at a Toronto university. I've taught politics, social science research methods, and labor studies courses for the last 5 years. The point of my job is, well, I help students develop reading, writing, and critical thinking skills. In theory, I give them a liberal arts education, which will expose them to lots of new ideas and things like art, literature, and other things that will help them cultivate themselves as free, creative individuals. Unfortunately, in actual practice, I basically help give my students the skills to get entry-level jobs. There's not much leveling involved. The students who are good at school generally do well, and the students who aren't generally don't. Many of my students are the first generation in their families to get a university education, and most will end up working in jobs that have no relation to what they studied in school. So what are the major grievances at my job? I really like my job, and if it wasn't for this job, I wouldn't be able to afford graduate school. That said, the wages are low, and the neoliberalization of the university means that more and more people like me are going to continue on in academia in low-paying and precarious academic teaching jobs. If my work was part of a larger fighting labor movement, what would it be like? Well, I have a good trade union, however, it has its limits. If my union was part of a bigger, broader fighting labor movement, we could conceivably win free tuition. This would be a significant amount of money saved for people like me who pay to go to grad school and work. It would also mean my students would get to spend more time focusing on school and less time juggling work schedules. And so the big question, what would my job be like if we won and there was actually no capitalism? Well, as a PhD student, I study prison labor, and I hope that if we win, I'd have to find something else to study. Thank you. My students would be more diverse if certain populations weren't systematically excluded from university education, but moreover, grading, one of the things that I hate the most about my job, would be unnecessary. I would get to teach students who are going to school because they want to learn, rather than any other reason like improving their general chances at getting a job. Instead of being a short-year period in some people's lives, university could be something that many people do all throughout their lives, pursuing education related to things that interest them regardless of what they do for a living. Thank you.
So as Jordan said, my name is Matthew, and I am a member of the IWW, and so let me go through this. So what is my job? So my job is to assist in the day-to-day activities of research. In my case, it's healthcare research. I collect data and ensure the quality of the data. I also help out with any general tasks in the office. But the point of my job, evidence-based research is vital to improving the quality of care for people. So for example, if you want to develop a test that can predict with good accuracy whether or not someone will develop a certain kind of cancer based on lifestyle, or Alzheimer's disease based on a history of depression, or whatever else, you need research to do that. You need data. Hopefully large, representative data, in order to do so with any confidence. The same is true on the treatment side. Whether it's a pharmaceutical or any other type of treatment like psychotherapy or certain kinds of exercise, you need data. In order to collect that data, you need workers, often many workers, in many different locations, recruiting participants, carrying out the measurement, organizing the medication, reviewing the data, writing the publications about the findings. But what are the grievances? On the level of the individual laboratories, workers are often overwhelmed. Public grants are rarely enough to sustain a lab for a long period of time. In order to survive the cycle, managers have to try to cobble together enough funding to keep going. This could mean accepting contracts from private sponsors, such as pharmaceutical companies. Working on clinical trials, as I know, can be time-consuming, and they can also be very difficult, and there's a lot of issues there. But altogether, this means that the research workers are putting in more hours than they're paid, sometimes 12 hours a day for being paid only 8 of them. How would my job be different if I had a fighting union? I am in a trade union. Not many research analysts are across this country, but generally, as workers, we're the ones who know on the front line what's happening. We're the ones collecting data. We often know what's working and what's not working. We can often see when the quality of the data is lacking and could be more efficient, and we could respond way more rapidly to improve things. We also have a sense of workload and how evenly it should be divided between staff. Often the managers, who are under pressure to do more with less, will bring on volunteers or graduate students to do the work of staff members. No offense to graduate students. But this is a Band-Aid, and usually ends with the student or the volunteer leaving as soon as they rightfully find better work. And it just keeps the cycle of people coming and going fast going on. But what would my job look like if there was no capitalism? I hope that there would be no private medical firms or producers. Anyone who feels deeply about the integrity of science should want this. We know that there is an influence of private funding on research. It's a significant problem and we have a name for it. It's called funding bias. In addition, there are concerns and maybe evidence that medical practitioners are biased by gifts, travel vouchers, stipends, and conference fundings provided by pharmaceutical companies. And this influences the decisions they make when providing care. All of these factors and more can degrade the quality of care that we provide to each other, and we should consider this the challenge that anti-capitalist and something we should strive for.
Hey, I'm David. I'm from the Washington, D.C. GMP, and I'm a library associate. So if you come to the public library in D.C., you'll see me or somebody else, probably with my job title, sitting at the desk. If you ask us a question, that can be literally anything at all, we'll try to answer it. We point people to various library services. We Google things for people who call us because they don't have internet access or they don't know how to use the internet. We are the point of contact between the bosses of the library and the public. We find books for people, recommend books, put up displays, put on programs that can be author talks, book clubs, panel discussions, film screenings. We have a Pokemon club. And we help people with basic computer problems. We go find holes for people in the morning, and at night we pick up whatever mess is there that isn't like trash. We have a separate janitorial staff. Public libraries are in a weird nether region. They're partially about propping up capitalism, subsidizing job searches and housing searches, so that private money doesn't have to pay for that. But they're also partially real benefits that have been won by people. They are genuinely public spaces, among the few of those, where anyone can come and find a book or a movie or a CD or get on the internet. Libraries are places where unhoused people can stay during the day. We do have police in our library, but they are more hands-off than cops would usually be, i.e. they don't actively drive people with severe mental illness out of the location. When people get out of jail or prison, they often come straight to the library to try to contact family members or start looking for a job or a place to stay, and just generally reestablish themselves. Our major grievances at the library are cuts to our vacation and wages recently, ongoing understaffing, and generally the stresses of working with people who are not having their needs met, housing, adequate medical care, food, transportation, clothing. Sometimes there's violence at the library, mostly fistfights, but we did have a slashing earlier this year. The boss told us not to call it a stabbing, it was a slashing. That's better, apparently. There's also harassment, some of it sexual, of staff. Much of our equipment does not work very well, and there are interest groups in the community that would like to displace probably the better part of our regular patrons, and just send them somewhere. If we had a fighting union at work, the cuts that I mentioned would have been fought. Our union, we do have a union, but it acquiesced utterly to those cuts. A labor movement interested in fighting for the entire working class wouldn't have unions like mine with prison guards and police in those unions. We would not have police in the library, and with sufficient organization and working class power, we could make sure that everyone would have what they need to survive, which would make my job much, much less stressful. Not having to, find someone a way to live, which is, if you've looked for a job recently, it's really hard and it's not easy. I don't have a special line to the capitalist class, be like, hey, get this guy a job. The library is in some ways already a little island of freedom, but capitalism is parasitic on that freedom. I've helped people with maddening, self-contradictory job and benefits and visa applications. If the library could just be a place for people to come and hang out and read or fool around on the internet, it would be the best place imaginable. But as it is, people are forced to the library to survive, as patrons seeking refuge or assistance, or as workers in need of a wage. Take away that pressure and the public library could be the keystone of a better society.
Loud enough? Yeah, okay. Hi, I'm Sarah. I am with the Toronto Harm Reduction Workers Union, and I'm a social worker at a drop-in center / day shelter in the downtown east area of Toronto. What is the point of my job? On a day-to-day basis, I do a huge variety of things. We try to be there for whoever and whatever comes in the door. We have mental health supports, counseling, information on safer drug use and safer sex work, basic necessities like food, sanitary products, warm clothing. On any given day, I do data entry for our needle exchange use. I make breakfast for 200 people, break up a fight, cut hair, paint nails, help people get a detox bed, all kinds of things. The drop-in I work at is run by a major Christian denomination funded by churchgoers, I guess out of Christian notions of charity, although I don't really notice this day to day since our programming is secular. Basically, we're an emergency service. We give people a place to go so that they aren't sitting on the street all day. Some days it feels like we could be a lot more than that, but we're not fundamentally set up to really change anything. Major grievances and issues. A lot of my frustration at work comes from larger social and political issues that we run up against. We try to help people navigate systems and access resources, but sometimes you find only brick walls as the systems don't work and don't care, and the resources for people's basic needs, let alone anything beyond that, just aren't out there. It can feel like we're spending a lot of energy just to put out one fire after another and never actually getting anywhere. Many of our staff are kept just below full-time hours without benefits, sick days, or enough pay to prevent us from having to worry at the end of the month. It's hard to ask for more for ourselves when we are constantly told there is no more, and we are made to feel greedy for asking for living wages and better working conditions from under-resourced agencies who pit our needs against clients and tell us it's one or the other. We're also managed by a board and director who are out of touch with what goes on day to day at work and often hand down policies and regulations that become one more obstacle we have to work around or work against. If we had a fighting union at work and we're part of a fighting labor movement in all sectors of society, I think a lot of the people that use our services would probably not be in quite the same level of dire circumstances that they're currently facing. In our own work, many of my coworkers would have a much easier time coming to work and doing their jobs if they weren't also worrying about unmet needs in terms of childcare, healthcare, and other financial obligations they can't afford, balancing a second job to make ends meet, and so on. And if there were no capitalism, my job would look hugely different if there was no capitalism. So much of what we are dealing with is the fallout and collateral damage of the capitalist system and associated oppressions like the war on drugs and criminalization of poor and racialized people, and a society which doesn't meet people's basic needs and leaves so many people marginalized, traumatized, and fucked over. I would like to think the building where I work would still stand and have a function after capitalism. It's a huge, beautiful old church with apartment units above it and lots of kitchen and office space, and it would be an amazing community resource. I would love for our staff to be more like groundskeepers or facilitators, working with our community to use the space to gather, socialize, have concerts, meals, meetings. The possibilities are endless.
Hi, I'm going to be reading on behalf of another member of the Toronto IWW. I am a deckhand and an engineer on 3 boats on the Toronto harbour front. I also do maintenance on the boats during the off-season. The point of my job is that I contribute to the safe operation and maintenance of the boats and ensure a good customer experience. My work is generally part of the entertainment industry and provides 2 types of entertainment: public sales and private charters. During the hour-and-a-half public sales where anyone can buy a ticket, there's a larger emphasis on customer service. We encourage customers to help raise the sails, talk with them about the history of the ship, fire the cannon, etc. During the private charters, which include birthday parties, corporate events, and weddings, we are mostly concerned with the operation of the boat apart from occasionally helping the bar and servers with their work. Major grievances. Most grievances from myself and my coworkers can be put into 2 categories: asshole managers and cheap owners. Story of my life. In addition to many minimum wage positions and paying below industry standard for others, the company blatantly violates labor laws with unpaid trainings, charging $90 for t-shirt, ball cap uniforms, and no unpaid overtime. Maybe the t-shirts are like gold-plated. No paid overtime.
They're ethically sourced.
And I'm wearing a really nice Panhandlers Union t-shirt, which you can buy at the back, but they're not $90.
But they are ethically sourced.
They're ethically sourced. Things go unfixed or unserviced to save money, often costing the company much more in the long run while putting the crew's safety at risk. Footholds snap while climbing the mast, and mooring lines snap while docking. I also nearly electrocuted myself due to exposed wiring and leaking black water which means shit, lines. My coworkers joke that it is a matter of time before someone dies on the job and lament that it will probably take a death to change anything. How would it be different if we had a fighting union at work and were part of a fighting labor movement? The biggest challenge to be faced by a union effort at my seasonal workplace is job retention, ensuring that the workplace militants would be rehired after the winter break. A fighting union would allow us to stand up to the manager and address safety concerns without fear of not being hired back next season. The freedom we feel and the fun we have when the manager is absent from the ship would be the norm, not the exception. A better wage would certainly be possible given the company's outstanding profits. And after capitalism. Instead of maximizing profits by overselling the space and quick trips, the crew could undertake more lengthy and interesting cruises. Safety and environmental practices would be prioritized. More labor would be put into the boats to increase their quality. Rude and disrespectful customers would be treated likewise instead of groveling we must currently do.
Hi, I'm Lena. I'm also going to read a testimonial on behalf of another member of the branch. Okay, so I work as a nurse right now in a community health center. What's the point of your job? Why do community health clinics exist in capitalism? We don't make profits for capitalists. Our patients are marginalized in different ways. Many were born outside Canada, and there are lots of paperwork problems. Others live with various disabilities, do not speak English, are poor, but they're really fierce, resilient people who I love to work with. A big chunk of the people I work with don't have access to the provincial health plan, so the place I work gets money to help them out, but there are lots of challenges in accessing the resources. Migrant labor is important for the economy, and this includes people without documentation who are desperate for jobs. So workers have to be relatively healthy to work. The government knows that, giving them the basic health care keeps the machine running. The clinic gets a lot of money from the government, but it mostly goes to managers. Our clients get shafted and are kept in their place. So what are the major grievances or issues? I spend a lot of time every day hustling to get stuff for my patients that would normally be no trouble at all. It takes away from my ability to do regular things at work. Aside from outside factors, upper management seems to go out of their way to make things difficult. It's very frustrating. Someone who works in another part of the clinic once said to me, it's like they don't want us to help people. So how would your job be different if you had a fighting union? If I had a fighting union at work, we would be able to pressure management to allocate resources in ways that helped us along. Less sunshine, less management in consulting firms, more receptionists and frontline staff. What would your job be like if we won and there was no capitalism? If there was no capitalism, my job would be radically different. I wouldn't have to spend so much time trying to pull people out of the river. We could stop them from being thrown in the first place.
Okay, so bear with me because I'm an all-world public speaker and I wrote this 20 minutes ago. My name is Summer. I'm a domestic care worker, sewing nanny for 2 kids, a 21-month-old and a 6-month-old, as well as I keep up with the cleaning of the household. What's the point of my job in terms of capitalism? Well, first of all, I help the mother of the children manage her after-school care while her partner is at work and continue to work and bring money for their family. I facilitate early development learning activities through songs, repetitive pattern games, to help with memory and encouraging visual art activities. Basically, I make sure they're having fun and being cared for during their before bed routine. Reproductive labor isn't valued within capitalism, obviously. This is very gendered work. So I make it so families can work within capitalism. Specifically, my bosses are very high paid. They work for major corporations, and I make their lives a little bit easier working for a lower wage, much lower than they bring in. So that would be one of my major grievances as well. I make minimum wage when most nannies in the city are making between $15 and $20 an hour. On the flip side, that doesn't speak to migrant workers who are making often less than I am. So I mean, that's a grievance. And I also work on a one-on-one basis, so I don't have coworkers, which makes it really difficult and frustrating because there's no one to complain about my boss to. Luckily, I am in the IWW, so that has helped. I've spoken to many other care workers in the industry and kind of hashed out some ideas and that's been really helpful for grievances so far and kind of just dealing. How would my job be different if we had a fighting union? Well, if we were organized in unionists, we could ensure an equal pay wage policy across the board, which would help the migrant care workers as well as people like myself, who are especially exploited within the industry, as well as providing support for each other since the work is generally so isolating. What would it look like after capitalism? Well, it would be a collective effort, and community members would help with child care, and it wouldn't be treated as such a burden. There would also be wider education around the subject, so it didn't have to be so gendered and put on women. Men could help out too. We would all help out so we could provide quality care for kids and allow parents to spend their time owning skills that they're interested in and helping them use their existing skills elsewhere in the community.
So thanks for listening to all of our testimonies. Now we want to throw this question on to all of you, or these questions. And so we'd like to take about 10 minutes. And we'd like you to introduce yourself to your neighbor, whoever you're sitting next to. Tell them what you do. Tell them why the job that you do exists, given the society that we live in. We're all public service workers here. I guess we didn't really talk about that. The IWW has a broad conception of the public service. Basically all workers who work directly with the public. And so many of these jobs are public sector, some of them are NGO, and so the question of the utility of our jobs in capitalism is a question. So maybe try to explore that a bit. But also, importantly, we would like you to explain what the grievances you have at work are, and think about what it would be like if we were part of a bigger, larger fighting labor movement. And finally, what would your job be like if capitalism was defeated? So please take 10 minutes and talk to your neighbor.
Hello.